Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt, and this is the place we talk about the business of art and the art of business. Today is a Q&A with my guest, Joe Johnson, an illustration. Well, when I met him, he was a student, but now he has graduated and he is making his way in the world. And he had some questions for me. We talk about the impact of COVID. Mind you, we began, well, we didn't begin anything. We had this interview last fall, which is also why we look like we're going to fight off the thing because it was very cold here in the Chicagoland area. But even though it's summer, it seemed like an appropriate time to air this episode. So we talked a little bit about COVID, the impact of COVID. Will there be any lingering effects of COVID in the illustration industry? And we also talked about how to get noticed. Joe is a really cool guy, a really good illustrator. I encourage you to check him out on Instagram at Joe underscore the illustrator. Does some really cool vectory looking stuff with planes and like jet fighters, and he has kind of a cool industrial yet kitschy feel to his work. And you'll see that when you take a look at him on Instagram. And before we get into the interview, would you please subscribe to the show, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or you're watching on YouTube? If you could hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate that. That just helps to get the show noticed. If not by any other people, it gets noticed by the algorithm, the infamous algorithm, right? And will rise up a bit through the ranks. And I really depend on you because I don't advertise. I don't plan to advertise. Maybe that'll change in the future. But this is a really grassroots show and kind of bare bones. And I'm really just interested in bringing the information to you, whether it's a solo episode I'm doing and just sharing some insights, or having guests on from all around the world. And if you have an artist in your life that you think could benefit from the show, would you mind sharing it with them? That would be awesome. All right, let's get on to our Q&A as I chat with Joe Johnson. So cool. So tell me, how can I help you, my friend?
Well, I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
First and foremost, how to freelance in the post-COVID market? Because illustration is a mostly freelance business, or it was before everything happened, and it most likely will afterwards. So could you give me some advice on how to navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question. And it has some of the same challenges that we've always had before COVID, and it has some new challenges post COVID. Um, I was actually just sitting with an artist, a young guy like yourself, and I was suggesting to him that he really needs to make a move and start working in a studio in some capacity. And he said it's so hard to do with COVID now because nobody's hiring. And that's a blanket statement. I don't know that nobody isn't hiring, uh, but I do know that it's definitely more challenging than it's ever been. When you can actually get in somewhere and meet with people, and they can get a sense of who you are. It's a really really important step in any relationship. um, Zoom is great. It's what we have right now, that as we're social distancing, it's what we're using. But ultimately, if we can get back in person and get together. So how do we overcome COVID, as we're trying to build relationships and get freelance work? Is that what you're looking for? Are you looking for a full-time gig?
That would be ideal, but I think right now the most I can hope for is just freelance stuff
Yeah.
on a case by case basis.
And just to be a little more specific, what kind of work do you do?
I do a lot of work, a lot of concept work. I specialize in like machinery and mechanics and stuff, but I can do pretty much almost anything. Character designs, object design. And I think one of my greatest passions, my greatest areas of expertise is poster and graphic design as well. So I can combine my knowledge with all that design work with objects and characters and stuff, and I can use that to create like conceptual posters for like video games or movies or comic books.
Okay. So with that being said, and it also, it looks like you work a lot in vector. So you're an Adobe Illustrator.
It's mostly Procreate, but I do have good knowledge of Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I wouldn't have pegged that as all Procreate. I thought that looked like a lot of vector work. So that's pretty neat. Have you ever worked with Affinity, by the way?
No, I haven't.
Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't yet to use it.
Yeah, it's like a cheap one-time payment platform, as Procreate is to kind of Photoshop.
Hmm.
Affinity is to both Photoshop. Actually, there's an a Photoshop version of Affinity, and then there's an Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator version of Affinity as well. But they don't cross-platform, so that's interesting. You couldn't use them together, but I believe they're only iOS, but I could be wrong. You may be able to use it on your desktop.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so with that being said, um, I would say knowing that it's COVID, knowing that the economy has hit a lot of businesses very hard, I would say you need to be in the business right now of connecting with potential clients slash employers. You need to be um, figuring out who it is that you want to work for. And because we are actually in a season of distancing, they could be anywhere in the world. Like it doesn't matter if you're in there or not, because it just it's a lot of people are working remotely now. So I would encourage you to put your best work together and then do your best to get into contact with the people who need to see your work to hire you. So this means you either need to, if you've got your top five, I think this was something I actually did communicate to you when we were chatting, uh, direct messaging and Instagram. I would get your top five, and I would find out who are the people at these companies, who can you actually directly reach out to. If that's something that you do on LinkedIn, if that's something you do by calling the company, and now you got to get past the firewall, right? Which is the person who answers the phone.
Hmm.
And you may need to call a few times to really kind of figure out who it is. Because once somebody knows that you don't know the person that you're after, it seems like they'll generally they're not in the position, or they are in the position to not help you. They're trying to protect the time of the people who are working there. And I think that you need to be proactive in trying to get in touch directly with that person, because if you send in a resume, it's likely to sit on a pile. If you send in a portfolio, it's likely to sit on a pile. If you DM somebody directly or email somebody directly, now you've got a chance. You've got a really good chance to get their ear, or at least much better than sitting in a pile.
Hmm.
And I've always felt if I can get into touch with somebody directly, I just have a much better chance of getting my foot in the door to at least start to develop a relationship where they know I'm out here and they know what I do. And uh, then I may come to mind, especially when they find out that I can actually do what I say I can do, and they may actually like me, which you need that in a relationship, right?
Hmm.
Because there are a lot of people out there who may not have the most refined interpersonal skills, or you get a lot of fans with comic books and video games, right?
Yeah.
And so there's definitely a difference too between fan art and leveling up into that professional scheme. And I think a lot of artists and designers who are in the pro world know that it's challenging to begin with, and they definitely know it's more challenging with COVID. So, my encouragement to you would be do your homework, find the person, and get in touch with them. Not to be a nuisance, right? You don't
Yeah,
want
you
to.
don't want to keep bothering them.
Right. And you don't want to like bust into the virtual room like Kramer and Seinfeld, right? You want to come in professionally and, hey, I'm Joe Johnson and this is my work, and I want to work for you. And I would encourage you to be very direct about that as well. Any thoughts on that response?
No, I feel like that's a very good step, a very good system of steps to get that employment, to get that foot in the door.
And I think once you actually do get the attention of the person that you need to get the attention of, uh, and if you can get them to look at your work, and if you can get feedback from them, because what you really want is you want to be able to provide a service to them that they value. And I kind of go back to high school and talking to my dad, and I would disagree with a teacher on a particular topic, a paper I was writing or something I had to hand in. My dad would say, look, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you think. You're trying to please the teacher and get a good grade. So find out what the teacher wants and deliver to the teacher, because the teacher is your audience, right?
Hmm.
And it was just, I think it was, I mean, it's weird that we live in a world like that, but it is the world we live in. And so
Yeah.
if you want to get a good grade for the teacher, you need to do what it is the teacher needs you or is expecting you to do. And it's the same with our clients and our employers, the people we work for. We need to satisfy what their expectations are. So if you can ask them, hey, what do you think of my portfolio? And they're like, oh, it's great, we'd love to hire you right away. Or it's like, you know I think we're going to pass and hold right now. And we all hear that happens at some point in our careers. And
Hmm.
then I would encourage you to continue reaching out and ask, can you tell me what it is I need to improve, and what would I need to do to be able to work with or for you?
Hmm.
And when you come to somebody humbly like that, people usually like to help because they've been in the same spot that you're in. So hey, even with that answer, is there was that clear? Is that
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty clear.
Okay. All right. Have you done anything like that yet?
No, I've pretty much been working on my portfolio. I've been redoing old work and
Yeah.
kind of compiling it into different piles for different companies.
Okay. That's cool.
Well, you kind of answered my second question already, how to get companies to notice you.
Hmm. So um, maybe I'll go even a little further than that. It depends. It depends what you're how you're trying to get noticed. Uh, and I I will I should say, at times put together special pieces for an individual, something unique.
Hmm.
And um, this story may be old to you, but it'll probably be new to the audience. And I had a cartoon series that I was developing with a writing partner. And so we wrote up the show. It was going to be like a half-hour show or 20 minutes or whatever, right? Idea was Nickelodeon. And it was kind of, it would have been a SpongeBob-ish show. And the main character was a zombie. and he was a really, really cool, young, hip guy who was very positive. He wasn't half dead, he was half alive,
Hmm.
and his name was Zombie Todd. And Zombie Todd um, was in this world that mixed a kind of Wisconsin farmland and bowling with Zydeco music and New Orleans. So we had like corn stalks growing that were interspersed with red peppers and chili peppers, and there were alligators that were like bumps in the road, and so we had all this stuff going on, and there
Hmm.
were a lot of chickens around. And anyway, we wrote 3 scripts, and I designed all the characters and illustrated all the characters, and now we needed to get somebody to see these. Fortunately, I had one connection at Universal through a mutual friend that he said I could refer me to him, and he said, okay, yeah, go ahead, send your script in. And then we got the names of all the people that we needed to send scripts and artwork to at Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, and Universal, of course. And then I think there was one more. I can't remember what it was. But what I did is I made a poster up, and Zombie Todd would ride on a rocket fueled skateboard, and I had this background which was all corn and red chili peppers, and there were some chickens, and I had this kind of dynamic poster where they're flying out of it. So what I did is I took Zombie Todd and I took the chickens off the poster, and I just left an outline of white, but I left the corn and the red chili peppers and the blue sky in the background. And I printed it up on a big like 30 by 40 or 20 by 30 or something poster. And it said at the top, it's coming, or they're coming, dot, dot, dot.
Hmm.
And then I went and I took that poster and I got a tube. So I got 5 tubes, right? And 5 posters. And I rolled them up and put them in the cylinder. And then I stuffed each cylinder full of plastic red chili peppers and chicken feathers. And I sealed it. And I sent one to Universal. I sent one to my contact at Nickelodeon, and so on and so forth down the line. And I figured one of 2 things would happen. One, they'd open it up, chicken feathers and peppers that go everywhere, and then they'd see the poster, and they would either think it was the coolest thing that somebody tried to do, or they would be really upset. But either way, they would remember. Either
Hmm.
way, they would remember. And so I sent that out. I heard back from all 5 contacts, and they said, this is cool. We're looking forward to seeing what you're going to send. And so I sent the the next package that we had to everybody, and with a new poster with Zombie Todd on it. And uh, I got a visit out to Universal. So I flew out to LA. I went and met with the contact at Universal. And it was very interesting because I heard from all the other studios as well. And they all passed on it, but they all had a very positive feedback for me. And they said, hey, if you write new work, if you create new things, we will look at your work. We'll look at it and we'll consider it. So, you know, I just I thought, man, they're going to notice. I want people to notice what I'm doing. And honestly, too, sometimes people just notice if you're kind and how you come across. If you have emotional intelligence, and if you're professional, you know, if you call somebody sir, or if you can write a clean letter to somebody without, and by clean I mean don't have a bunch of misspelled words, or you're not creating awkward sentences. You can communicate clearly, because people want to work with people that are easy to work with. If they're
Hmm.
constantly having to kind of clarify what it is you're attempting to communicate, then that's more work for them. And if it's more work for them, it's going to be more work for the whole process. And it's a hard one to overcome
Yeah.
if you're not aware of it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh no, it definitely does.
Yeah. And honestly, if you have any additional thoughts to any of my answers or any other questions come up, please feel free to ask.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like that's a really good system. If you send like a little care package to like companies with merchandise, I think that's like a really smart way, a really good way to both improve your own artistic skills and maybe earn their attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if, if it's unique, it has an intrinsic value then on its own. And it's something people might keep in their cubicle or by their desk or on their Zoom now, right? And other people see it's like, hey, look, this illustrator, what was his name? Joe Johnson. He sent me this thing and this is really cool. And, then you never know when your name is going to come up.
Hmm. Okay, I do have another question,
Cool beans.
and it's something that I have struggled with in the past. How do you avoid artistic subject fixation? Because I think I told you already that before I came to the academy, I was actually trained to be a pilot. I love aviation. I'm super into aviation. I go to a huge aviation festival in Wisconsin every year. And a good chunk of my work is aircraft, airplanes. Whenever I'm doing like a new artistic style, trying out new tools, I'll always draw an airplane first because that's something I'm really, really good at drawing. And it's a good way to gauge my ability and how I work with the tools. But that also comes with the flip side of me doing too many airplanes and just getting fixated on that subject matter. So, how would one avoid artistic subject fixation?
Well, I think with the art that we're talking about, with getting into the comic book industry or getting into the video game industry, you need to figure out where do you fit in, what problems do you solve, and can you solve enough problems to be um, a useful tool to your client, because that's what it's all about, right? It's not about, look how cool this stuff is that I can do. You can do the coolest stuff in the world, but if it doesn't benefit somebody else, they're not going to pay you, right?
Mhm.
It's just cool, and then they flick by it on Instagram. Right? So
Right.
the goal is to look at what is it, what skills do I have, and specific vision, technique, all of this, what can I add to the pot to satisfy the needs of my client? Now, if all I send my clients all the time are planes, and my different clients are there's a comic book with dinosaurs, and then there's a comic book with all these superheroes, and then there's a video game that is set back in Jurassic times, or I don't know why I'm going all dinosaur on you. It shows what I like to draw, right? but
Yeah.
but your airplanes aren't going to fit in there, so I think you need to make certain that you're not limiting your potential workload and clientele by what it is you don't do. Like what else can you draw and paint that's in your portfolio?
I can do almost anything. I can do characters, I can do objects, like either from really, really big objects like vehicles and buildings, all the way down to really, really small handheld stuff like phones and coffee mugs.
Now, is that reflected in your portfolio?
Not currently, but that's what I'm working on right now. I'm creating
Okay.
like a whole new set of object pieces, little
Yeah,
handheld objects.
that's awesome. So I have a friend named Michael Spooner. And Michael is, I interviewed him for the very first episode of the Breakthrough Creative. I don't think I put it up on YouTube, but you can hear it on the podcast. So it's episode 1. Michael is a world designer, and he has worked for Disney on movies, for VeggieTales. I think he was the vice president of visual design for VeggieTales, and um, he designs. He worked on Hotel Transylvania, one of those movies where he was designing um, tools and whatnot. Like he'd do the hammer, he'd do this and that and the other thing that was a tool, just like you're saying. And Michael, he has a very specific style, but he's also malleable enough to work uh, in a variety of different, like he's not just stuck on I just draw hammers all the time, right? He works
Hmm.
on a little bit of everything. So, I would say just make sure that you diversify your portfolio. And on the flip side of that, if you're really good at airplanes, how can you make that work for you? Like, is there some potential for you to do illustrations for Boeing? Is there a potential for you to do illustration work for the military, or for other companies that work with aircraft or
Exactly.
manufacture aircraft? Have you thought about that?
I have actually.
Have you done
It's
anything
always in
with
the back
that?
of my
Or
mind. Uh, no, I haven't, because the aerospace industry is kind of in flux right now
yeah,
with everything. A lot of stuff has happened even before COVID, so I don't know how exactly it's going to plan out. But
yeah,
I'm always keeping like a couple of portfolios in reserve for companies like them.
yeah. So I would encourage you, you know bear in mind the economy and what's going on, but the economy isn't always as bad for everyone as it may appear to be, or you may think it is. I've been very busy through COVID with my clients, particularly with product development. And there may be issues with the aerospace world, right? But I would say put something together and see if there isn't something for you there. You never know. You don't know if you don't ask, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've got a book for you that I'd encourage you to read. And I don't know if I can show it on here, so I'm not going to, but it's called The Third Door by Alex Banayan, Banayan. And he basically says there's a couple of ways into a nightclub, right? One, you
Yeah.
get in line. Two, you know somebody. Or three, you run in and you're trying to find the third door, like a side way in to get into something. And I bring it up because it's really the story of him writing this book, and it's fascinating what he has done, and it reminds me a little bit of some of the things I've done, the approaches I've taken. But he ends up shadowing the CEO of Zappos for a day, 2 days actually.
Hmm.
And the last day, he is alone with the CEO, and CEO asked him, "Did you enjoy this?" And Alex said, "Yeah, this is great." I'm paraphrasing, of course. He said, "This is great." And he asked him, would you let your employees shadow you? And the reason why he asked that is some of the employees had mentioned to Alex over the course of 2 days, "Wow, this is really cool. I'd really like to do this. You're shadowing with them. Wow, wow, wow." And so, Alex asks the CEO that question, "Would you let your employees shadow with you?" And the CEO, I can't remember his name, he says, "Yeah, I would, but no one's ever asked." So, can you imagine that? Like they're by him every day, and they're just not asking him. So there's so much power in asking. What's the worst that can happen is people say no,
Yeah.
or you don't hear back from them, right? And which is
Yeah.
another form of no. It's kind of a
It's
passive
ruder.
aggressive
It's
no.
ruder, but like I
Yeah,
prefer just the in-person no.
yeah. Or they're busy, right? Or whatever it is. But
Hmm.
nonetheless, if you don't ask, you won't ever get the
You won't ever
yes.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I recommend you give that book a read. It's a good one. And it just helps you to uh, think a little bit more abstractly about opportunities.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
All right, I have one last question.
Excellent.
How do you think the art market will adapt due to the COVID pandemic and current events?
Hmm. Any other current events in mind specifically?
Uh, well, just the whole process of reopening, pretty much.
Okay.
Because some countries have handled it better than others, and even the ones that have done better than our country are experiencing like new spikes. So I just want your opinion on how the art market is going to recover and try and maybe get back to a sense of normalcy.
Yeah. It's a great question. And if I had the answer, the exact answer, be a millionaire, right? Or a trillionaire, maybe, depending.
I'm just asking you to try your best.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So here's what I think. I think that, we've never experienced anything like COVID before, right? It is an unknown. And um, for me, it's been surprising at how busy I've actually been with clients through COVID. And I primarily work in the product development industry. So, I have old clients who are coming to hire me because they've got to keep making things, right? Or they won't have any money coming in. And then I
Hmm.
have some new clients that have popped up as well. So I would say I don't know exactly how we're going to bounce back, but I think one thing that we could probably agree on, uh, and again, not knowing that this would absolutely be true, but things are going to be different, right?
Yeah, that's
Things are,
pretty much a given.
yeah, things are going to be different than they were. I don't know what it's going to look like for people to return to places of business. Like, I don't know, like, is COVID going to pass? I was listening to uh, a virologist. I guess he was like one of the top two virologists in the world. And he said, honestly, we don't know what makes a virus come or what makes a virus go. Like a lot of viruses, he said, they just disappear. And he said, we don't know why. So, we don't know if, like, will this virus just disappear and then we'll never see it again? And then things will normalize to some degree, or will it come back harsher? So anyway, with that being said, I would say I don't know how it's going to impact the art market, but what I do know is we have so many tools now in communication. We have so many opportunities to learn new skills online, and on YouTube, and direct from coaches or from teachers to learn new things that we may not know. We can sharpen our skills in ways that we never could before. We've got Zoom where we can see each other face to face, and we can help to clarify whatever it is that we're working on this way. So there are just so many amazingly wonderful things that have come out of this season, and I wonder about businesses who have a substantial investment in renting space. They've rented space that they haven't been able to fill with people for the last 6 months. And that is a challenge. I really wonder how business real estate is going to come back. As far as art and artists, I think one of the challenges is that there are so many artists out there, so many visual artists out there working and doing good work. What is going to separate you from them? And so that's the thing I would focus on. I'm not terribly concerned about the economy around art. I think what we need to do is be on top of the trends. What is changing in the world? Because things come and go so quickly. I used to work with designers, sculptors, and if they didn't keep up with the digital world, then because you can sculpt digitally, and now you've got your 3D printers, right? And so
Yeah,
that's
all that
very
stuff.
efficient. Yeah, it's a very efficient thing, and it's very precise. Now, if you didn't keep up with that, it's just harder for you to work in the industry. So I think you just need to be ahead of the game in programs that you're working in technique, and then are you an excellent communicator? What can you do to become a more excellent communicator? Um, what can you do to build relationships with people that you like to work with, that you want to work with, who you could benefit with what it is that you bring to the table? And uh, how quick are you? What's your pricing? All this stuff. And I don't necessarily think going cheaper is better. I actually am much against that. If you're really good at what you do and you're really fast, you can't charge hourly anymore. You got to charge by the project, because
Hmm.
if you're good and fast and efficient and you're going to charge hourly, you're losing money. You're hurting yourself. So, I would encourage you to think about those things. How does that hit you?
I think that's very sound advice.
Yeah. Any additional thoughts on that? Like, does that stir anything for you?
No, but like that makes total sense. If you're doing like an hourly rate thing and you're losing money, you should totally charge on a per project basis. Like size, complexity, those are like good indicators that I've found personally when I charge clients for my projects.
Totally. And if you've got somebody who wants to know your hourly, they may not be the client for you. Like if they're really stuck on that, I don't know that
That's a
don't
red
I'm not
flag.
saying don't take the job if it's a good job and you need the money and you need the work and you want to build a portfolio, go do it. But some people are so stuck on the bean counting that it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts?
No, I think you've answered all my questions really concisely. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, dude, you rock. I would encourage you. The work that I've seen from you is it's very stylized and clean, and you have a definite style and you have real skills, and there's definitely talent at the foundation of all of that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're going to do as time passes. And I think with the skills and the talent that you already have, mixed with your proactive nature, keeping in touch, asking questions, being relational, I think that is going to set you up well to go far in whatever it is you choose to do. Boy, that was a really cool episode. I always love talking to other artists, not just to hear their stories, but also just to be a sounding board for artists who are finding their way. And I think Joe is going to be really successful. He's a really good illustrator. He is a very sharp cat. Just the conversations I've had with him apart from the interview. And I just love that he's thinking about the current times and what does COVID mean for the now? What's it going to mean for the future? And also just wondering how can he get noticed? And as far as COVID goes, my takeaways were COVID. Don't know if it's here to last for a while or it seems to be really fading now as the country is opening up. And I know that the economy has been impacted in different ways, and we had all the turmoil with the elections and just so many things going on. But if you can find your niche, you always seem to be able to do well, no matter what is going on in the world. At least in the U.S., because I haven't worked anywhere else. That has been my experience. And then as far as getting noticed, it's all about building relationships and thinking of just clever ways that are not obtrusive in a way that are unprofessional to connect with clients. And, so I would encourage you, do you know somebody who knows somebody? Do you have a way in? Are you using LinkedIn? Are you using Instagram? What are you doing to get your foot through that front door? Not a huge fan of sending resumes to places, especially if you're freelancing. I'm much more interested in finding the person I need to talk to who can make the decision to hire me. So just bear that in mind. And thanks again for subscribing to the show. Thank you for watching the show. And I do encourage you again to go check out Joe's work on Instagram at Joe underscore the illustrator, and give him a follow, and let him know how much you like his work, and encourage him. And I'm sure he'll be an encouragement to you too. And if you're interested in chatting with me or encouraging me, or you need an encouragement or some insight, you can email me at john@thebreakthroughcreative.com. And I hope that you have a fantastic week, and that you get about the business of doing whatever that next step is to more firmly plant yourself in the creative entrepreneurial world. Okay? Go get them, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.